Welcome back to Structured Insights. Every enterprise has a tech stack diagram that doesn't really look like a tech stack. And the reason isn't the tools. It's what's missing from the org chart. And today, Seth and Bill from Structured are going to be talking about that gap that nobody is talking about and the service they've built to fill it. Welcome, guys, to the pod.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let's do quick introductions before we get into it. Mr. Bill Tracy, welcome back.
Hey, everybody. Bill Tracy, CRO here at Structured. Great to see you.
Awesome. And new to the pod, Seth Crosby. What do you do?
Hey. Yeah, so Seth Crosby is my name. I have been at Structured for a little while now, and I have been in previous life engaged as everything from an application developer to an infrastructure engineer and later as an architect. And so I have adjacency to not only the data center, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and public cloud environments, but also the applications and the data systems that sit in each of those environments. So that's my background from about the last 20 years.
So you're smarter than the average bear. So welcome to the pod.
Tough living up to that.
All right, let's get into it. You guys have both walked into a lot of enterprises in your career. When you look at who's making the technology decisions in a typical enterprise, what do you see? Who's making the decisions?
Yeah, so I think that you have to ask kind of which decisions and at what level. The decisions they want to talk about, they're being made by senior leadership. You know, I mean, the CIOs usually got the purchasing power, the IT director and like other directors within them will be making technology decisions around things, usually validating like the technologies that they invest in. And yet there's all kinds of decisions that get made way down the organization on the day-to-day basis that impact the organization just as much as what they purchase. But it's usually not recognized in exactly the same way. It's not appraised perhaps appropriately. So the decisions are being made all over the place, but at the leadership level, they're trying to guide and steer the ship. And sometimes a rudder will get dropped in at the help desk level and it'll take the ship off a little bit different direction, to use the metaphor. So
it's a good one.
Yeah.
So when you think about obviously, there's IT directors, CIOs, CISOs, and then there's sysadmins at all levels. Do you think there's a gap right now in the organization that maybe they're not technical enough at certain levels to make the decisions that really drive steer the rudder the right way, I guess, to use your analogy.
Look, nobody can be master of everything, right? Somebody has to own the business objective decisions and like has to work with the board and has to work with the rest of the C-suite and be able to make qualified leadership decisions. And if they're doing that, they shouldn't be technical. They shouldn't have hands on the keyboard doing a thing, even if they came from a very technical background like mine. So there needs to be decision making at the right levels. And that's one of the things that I'm particularly interested in the offering that we're building, because essentially, I mean, we'll talk about what it is, but essentially what it is it's trying to give confidence for the right decisions at the right level. So I appreciate the way you've kind of set this up for us, because when you have an absence of technical leadership, seasoned, mature, senior technical leadership, you have then a lack of confidence at the lower level of people making technical decisions that may seem small or may actually seem big, but they don't know. They're just kind of hoping that it achieves the organization's mission, right? You don't have people at the help desk and maybe the sysadmin level who are trying to do bad for the organization, but they might actually make decisions that take the organization off track. Then you have like your senior leadership who are thinking in terms of business objectives, but they don't know how to translate that all the time into, well, what do I do with this M365 subscription that I need to adjust and this account that I need to create, right? How does that impact things because it's connected to this other project that we know is connected to something else, but we don't really understand it. So being able to like
Frankenstein constellation of technology, right?
Yeah, it is. And so you get, I mean, every enterprise, like you try so hard to like make everything cohesive, and yet you just end up with this smorgasbord, Frankenstein's creature of like being able to have like everything really like put together in a cohesive way. And that drift just happens. It's just the part of organic growth, right? Nobody's to be blamed.
What do you think a CIO usually thinks the problem is before they understand what the problem is.
It's interesting. I mean, I kind of see this as this. We talk about tech debt a lot in our business, and usually that's thought of as we have not evolved and updated our technology stack fast enough or often enough. There's another kind of tech debt of we've invested in a lot of tools and things. And as a leader, I think a lot of things are happening, or I think I'm deriving value from all these things. And maybe that's because it's also a tool, a service, a subscription, a technology is solving a base need. But as we were thinking about this offering we've been putting together and the way we've seen, it's really been based on challenges and needs we've seen within our customer base that's leading us to evolve this technology offering. That's really how I saw it, is how can we help our clients get more out of the tools and services and subscriptions they already own, but really maximize that investment. Because having this investing in tools and not fully maximizing them is even worse than having that tech debt of doing nothing at all in some cases. Because I'm absolutely, I'm now spending capital time and resources. So that leads back also to that disconnect. This decision may be made at the high level, right? And you get the CIO, the technology vendor, you can see the vision. How does that actually translate in the real world once that's down to the sysadmins, the network operators, the people with hands-on keyboards all day that are just trying to keep the enterprise running?
Do you think the tech debt, that piece of it, do you think it's underestimated, I guess, in our industry right now?
I don't know, Seth, I'm certainly interested in your opinion, but I think generally if we look at, you brought up M365 earlier.
Yeah.
I think of, pretty much any software subscription solution that our client is buying, these aren't point products anymore. They don't just do one thing. They might have 10, 15, 20 features, technology, services, or solutions built in. So I think it's vastly underestimated. Are we maximizing and getting the most value out of the tools that we have? Or have I bought tools and subscriptions because they've met individual team needs, requirements, or even sometimes personal biases and desires? Team one wants this tool, team two wants this tool. They both do 85% of the same thing. Should there have been a different strategy to what tools to adopt that should have happened at a higher level, which is, again, kind of the inverse of the one I just mentioned of the CIO making a decision, pushing that down to his team. This is the teams having the authority to buy the tools they need. And now next thing I know, I have 3 network monitoring tools. I have 3 security tools across 3 different teams. And Seth's laughing because I think he's gotten to see this firsthand over his career.
Yes. Totally have. And just to bring it back to those decisions, to answer your question, yes, there is too much tech debt. It is underestimated, right? But when you think about those decisions, you got some department and they say, but we think this is the best decision for the business and for us, and we don't want to use that tool over there. Another department says exactly the same thing. They're making these decisions with their sphere of level of confidence, and yet they don't know how to traverse all the way up to the CIO in order to really qualify the decision properly. Tech debt, it's interesting you bring that up. I'm in the middle of writing an article on that's going to get published here before long. And there is a McKinsey report from about 5 years ago saying that most organizations have about 20% of their 20% tech debt when measured against their total IT estate. Now, you think about a large enterprise and you say, first of all, the question you need to ask is how do you quantify the value of the technical estate, right? That's its own question. We won't get into that today. But what that translates down to, and this isn't just fuzzy math, but McKinsey actually says that's like saying you have 1 day a week that your engineers are just paying tech debt, right? And with their activities, 1 day out of 5, they're doing things that are simply paying the tech debt. They're not actually taking away the principal. They're just paying the interest on the debt, right? And so how do you get to the point where you're actually taking away the principal, not just paying the interest with that 20%? And many organizations, it's actually higher than 20%. That's a kind of a baseline from about 5 years ago. And I think that I've seen so many organizations where you look at it, you just throw this generic term tech debt on it, but you think about the principles of debt, and there is principal, there's interest, and interest just compounds unless you stay on top of it. So are you putting 1/5 of your organization's workforce at work paying down of that, just paying off the interest of the thing? And then what
That's
do
a
you
good
do
way
for
to.
the
That's a good
customer,
way to make a
right?
CIO start
So
sweating before they walk in.
yeah, yeah, unfortunately. And you don't want to just scare people, but like when you start putting the scale of that, oh yeah, it's a great idea just to add another solution to that.
Well,
Is
I think
it?
it is it maybe just to clarify for the
Yeah,
listeners
yeah,
too that when we
yeah,
say tech debt, I mean tech debt used to be like code and legacy systems, but like now tech debt really, as you just mentioned, I mean, it is a
yeah,
broader term to cover platforms,
yeah,
infrastructure, like I mean, right? It's not
totally.
just where I think
Yeah,
the
yeah,
world
yeah,
of it used to be over here, this little bucket. It's
yeah.
big.
Yep. And it changes in different contexts, right? So, I mean, you have tech debt around software, you have tech debt sometimes mislabeled around hardware because those are usually sunk costs. And so that's actually just, it's okay to have old hardware that's actually doing its job. Like that's not necessarily tech debt. But when you think about like tech debt in the private data center, you pay that debt with time and you pay it with money with people's time. But you think about tech debt of like you just do a misguided lift and shift from the private data center into the public cloud. Now you've got workloads that are missized and you're paying it with time plus the hourly cost at Azure or AWS or GCP or whatever your cloud is, right? So like your tech debt risk of your tech debt being higher is very significant. And in most organizations, they move over to the cloud and they say, this is so much more expensive. Well, part of that is because they never right size things and they're paying dollars in addition to time to try to just keep up with the interest of their tech debt.
You identified a problem. Let's talk about what Structured's doing about it. I mean, you guys obviously are an innovative company and been around a while. What is this new service that you are rolling out to really address this directly?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take first step, Seth, and then I think you can dive in maybe specifically around some of what your specialty focus is, because I think that's the key here. Is this is a one size fits all or a single prong approach. So, I think more just as I take a step back about how we got here, it really was born out of the managed service offerings that we were helping our customers with kind of day 2 to day XYZ operations of their network. That's a lot of break fix. That's a lot of responsiveness. There's always some proactiveness to that, right? Of helping our customers with, patching and tuning and those kinds of things. But what we really saw was that need for a higher level of service around specific tools, services, applications, compliance, frameworks, et cetera, that they needed. And so as we saw that, maybe this was really the start in some ways of kind of some VCIO, VCTO, VCISO services to help gaps in policy writing. There were some specific security tools like Aruba, formerly Aruba ClearPass, now part of HP networking, but their NAC tool in managing that for our clients, big complex tool, and led us to other services like Broadcom VMware virtualization. Our customers were looking for more services than a traditional managed service provider offering is, more like what we typically offer on our professional services consulting side, but having that in a consumable, structured, pun intended, regular access capability to a team where maybe working with, partnering up with somebody from Structured, 10 hours a month, a few hours a week, X% of the time to really derive the extra value from those tools and services that they have, while also taking the operational requirement off of that team so they can go focus on other things that help their business grow, support their business, et cetera. So that was kind of the impetus for these kind of strategic, platform services, niche platform services. And Seth is one of the people we brought on to help us specifically around data center and hybrid cloud and cloud customers. So maybe that's a good segue for you.
Yeah, sure. So I already started kind of talking about like the layers of stewardship in an organization, where at the top you have like your CIO, maybe CTO connected as well. And you're making decisions about the technology and the investments between those two roles. And you're also like how you handle your information, how you handle security. And you have maybe a group of people there at that level. And then you have your director levels, and then you have like your manager levels. And then below that, typically you have like your engineers, your sysadmins, and then your help desk. And everyone has different levels of stewardship of the things that they're responsible for in the organization, right? And everybody's trying to do the best job that they can. what we have built is what we're calling an enterprise platform managed service, because all of those people who are like technically oriented, they may not be technical in their skills, but like they're focused upon the technology of the organization. They really care about one thing: are the applications and the data that are required for our end users to drive the mission forward, are those available in a way that's resilient, that's performant, that's optimized in order to drive the business forward, right? Those applications and that data are supported by a whole stack of infrastructure and security tools and backup tools and replication tools and all these various things that ensure that those SLAs for the application and data are actually met. Now, when you have this sprawl that we've already talked about, and you have that layered organization, what you need senior technical leadership to be able to look at the places that are at highest risk and be proactive, reactive at times, but proactive about making sure that we don't get too close to the edge on the risk. We stay at a place where we have plans for all sorts of disasters, and we're ready for keeping the organization profitable and moving forward even when things change, like an ISP drops a fiber connection, and like, do you have the ability to make sure that you have all of that laid out so that you know what your plan is, and it's not just all hands on deck, red alert, we don't know what we're doing, but we'll get through this, we'll do it together. Like, that's a lot of organizations like what they default to, because they don't have that senior experienced technical leadership. I'm talking like senior operations engineers, senior infrastructure engineers, architects, right? At the small enterprise level, they often can't staff those positions. And that's where enterprise platform managed service comes in, right? We're providing those engineers for both reactive and proactive activities. And the name of the game is optimization. Like, there's times when we need to be proactive as kind of reactive as something may need escalated and it needs senior review because it's just a really thorny type of an issue. But the sysadmins typically handle like 90% of the issues, or maybe even much higher than that. But you're in a position where you can both do that, but you can stay attentive to the proactive things that keep the lights on in the organization, that keep things healthy, that keep things optimal. And that includes the issue of tech debt. That includes being able to say, okay, we've bought these products. How do we optimize those? Well, sometimes it's a consolidation. Sometimes it's recognizing, no, actually, there are different needs that justify this, but how do we make sure that we have it all well documented, all well planned, so that we don't have the kind of debt that comes from putting time into troubleshooting a system that has no documentation?
Before the pod, you and I
So-
talked about the term connective tissue.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
let's unpack that. Like, what are you
Yeah, sure.
describing when you say connective tissue
Sure.
within the technology space like this?
That's probably the thing that I find most interesting in these technology discussions, and the thing that I bring to the table is just a lot of awareness of the way that these technologies are interconnected, from like monitoring and observability tools to identity and authentication tools to an MFA and all of those things, all the way through the infrastructure layer, the application layer, and the backup and resilience products and solutions that you have in place. So like, the fact that all of those things, everybody knows they interconnect, but what do those interconnections look like? What's optimal for those types of interconnections? Where should they be leveraged, and where should they not be leveraged? Just give you a simple example. I've run into this before in organizations where everybody has Active Directory, right? No, not everybody, but most organizations have Active Directory. It's typically not a great idea to put Active Directory in an oversight role for your backup strategy, because you've got two different like prime targets for a cybersecurity threat actor, right? You've got the directory of the users where they want to get an escalation point there, and they've got your backups, right? So you keep those two things decoupled, but you do need some kind of like management of users. It shouldn't just be full manual for that backup system. So how do you solve that problem, right? Without creating more risk. You don't want to be waking up on the morning that you find out that you didn't calculate your future regret because you didn't think about the risks that you had. That's a sad morning.
That's the connections that this new service is. You're trying to keep that together to bring light to what's happening.
Yeah. And when we do that well, it gives the CIO confidence and the CTO confidence that they know that technically what's happening should be driving the business forward, or they can redirect. And it also gives the people at the help desk the confidence that they need, right?
So let me, I'll play the skeptical CIO or CTO.
Oh, please, yeah.
So they may be listening right now and they say, you know what, I got vendor relationships. I've got a consulting firm I use sometimes on retainer. What's different that with this service, with this offering, that is those pieces don't add up to be able to provide for an enterprise?
Sure. When you talk to a pre-sales engineer, they are typically incentivized to sell you something. They want you to buy something. Just typically, they might be there because they're good friends and you just want to like do good in the world, right? But typically they're there because they want to do good in the world by selling one of a few things, right? And so you end up with conversations with 2 or 3 different really talented pre-sales engineers or architects who can tell you like, here's the way you should be doing those things. What we're offering is not incentivized towards you purchasing anything at all. I mean, Structured sells hardware and software, and I want Structured to be profitable, but you know, a conversation with me does not involve any incentive for me in order to sell you a thing. Like I genuinely, like this is another thing that I love about it. I have no incentive towards that. And so I look at something and I can say, okay, I can with entirely transparent motives tell you what I think is best based upon my experience. And I don't have all the experience in the world. So let me go grab this other person over here and let's bring in their experience to play as well. But I'm going to govern and make sure that you get the best solution for what you need. And then you go to the marketplace and you decide how to invest in it, right? So when we talk about like sales cycles, that's some of it. The other thing is like when you hire somebody for a project and you have deployment engineers, the best deployment engineers in the world, they're working off of a statement of work, and they come in to deploy a thing and they are in a silo. And so you can build some of that connective tissue awareness so that they say, okay, and we'll integrate it with this. Always integrate it, well, unless it's a backup product with Active Directory, you know, those kinds of things get integrated. But then there's other things where it's like, oh, we didn't know you use this for MFA. Well, here's another SAL for that. And we actually need to bring somebody who knows that in, right? Because I work in this silo, right? That's what happens when you stay strictly, and projects have their place, right? But when you always rely on pre-sales engineering and projects, there's still a gap, right? And that's where
you
the
guys
engineers and architects that we bring in can kind of fill that gap, and we can advise and kind of give you the ability to say, okay, we've got this project, it's in its silo, we're going to keep it successful, and we're also going to identify the follow-up tasks that maybe even we can help with in making sure that all those connective tissue pieces get built. Because if they don't all get built, then you've got shelfware, right?
Yeah.
Which is not technically the same thing as tech debt, but like then you've got features. Maybe of 100% of the features of any product solution that you purchase, maybe you only need 80%. But if you're sitting at 40 or 60, we need to get you to 80. And that's what we'll do.
Yeah, my simple analogy is if you buy a car with a super cool feature in it that you never use.
Yeah.
Before we jump in,
use all the super cool features in my car. Nick, I think about this a lot. When you think about, when we talked a lot about some of our previous pods about our GRC and our cybersecurity services. When you think about our GRC services, they're very much about filling gaps, achieving compliance, but not about the technologies and pieces. Yet they can call on the rest of our cybersecurity team to fill in those pieces when needed, while still providing that connectivity to bring that all together to deliver a compliant outcome or a compliance framework. Because achieving cybersecurity compliance is not about just checking some boxes or putting some tools in or writing a policy. It's doing all of those things. Well, when it comes to the data center application delivery, hybrid cloud infrastructure, it's very much the same idea. And so I think just also answering your other question, that is one of the areas we think we're so well positioned is we have all of this expertise around all the different individual pieces that make this up, but then having folks like Seth and those on his team that can again help provide that oversight, that connectivity, that glue, and that strategy to bring that all forward into a cohesive outcome for the client.
Why now, Bill? Like, why now launch this service? Like, from a marketplace perspective?
And I've probably got several reasons for that, but at the end of the day, we still see every day our clients are struggling with finding and retaining the right people across their enterprise. we're continuing, especially with the advent of AI, our vendor technology solutions are evolving faster than ever, infrastructure options, and what and how our clients need to deliver applications and services to their users and their customers is changing more rapidly than ever. So we've been in this like 5-10 year-ish probably area where, just keeping and training and enabling the right people is hard enough. And now the tools are moving even faster than they did before. And the needs are moving even faster than they did before. So again, this calls on kind of a lot of experience, a lot of conversations, and a lot of the challenges we've just seen every day, both in our clients that we're delivering solutions for or we're managing, and just identified that, that there's no better time than now to help people bring in, just to give that extra level of sanity and confidence so that they can continue to focus on what's important to their business and their stakeholders, and we can help fill in those gaps, whether it's, skill, strategy, or solutions that they need to deliver those outcomes to their stakeholders.
Tell me about what do these engagements look like? Who are you sending into the engagements? What's the profile? Like, I guess it's a lot of people can get confused with, staff aug and VCIO, and like what you're describing seems different, right? It seems like a different flavor of that. So
this is not staff augmentation, right? That is providing an expert in any number of technologies to sit in a seat and be 100% managed. And if they don't do anything, the customer is still getting the client is still getting billed, right?
Yeah.
It's VCIO is also a little bit different. It's a little bit more advisory, right? So there's elements to both of those things that are maybe included in EPMS. We can be hands-on keyboard actually doing technical work, and that's the expectation that we're doing a certain amount of that. We can give advice around things, and yet you may have all the advisory team that you need, and you just need that technical leadership, right? You may have all the technical capabilities, and you say we don't actually need people to be hands-on keyboard working on a thing, but we'll just be looking at things and helping like play traffic cop in some sense, and okay, these things are important, these things are not, and like we can create a hybrid approach to that. You think about that sounds very binary, right? But you think about like the sprawl of the tech estate of any enterprise, and you say, okay, if we built a heat map of the expertise level and of all of the technologies that we have, there's going to be areas that are cooler and others areas that are hotter, right? We want to take those cooler areas and kind of level those up to the organization's need, right? And so when we bring people into an organization, we're not just bringing like some of my best friends are deployment engineers, right? We're not just bringing deployment engineers, we're bringing people who can synthesize a lot of different data points and perspectives and bring those things together and make well qualified judgments around, oh, this is how we should do this. And not just on the basis of a hunch, right? But oftentimes the best architects have a little bit of a hunch, kind of an instinct to them, right? To where they say, I think I know the right thing to do. Now let me go through and like do due diligence and make sure that we prove that out properly, right? We're not just working off of instinct, but instinct is really helpful when you're in a crisis, right? And that's an element to this. If you've got senior technical leadership that you are expecting on a contract, then there's a certain amount of this where you're just always going to expect that if there is alarm, that there is some emergent situation, that we're going to be there for you, and we will. That's so people who are able to like work under pressure, people who are able to like synthesize and bring a lot of things together and get things done, like all of that kind of like it sounds like superheroes, right? That's not necessarily who it is that is always there, but they feel like a hero because there's always been a lack of that in the organization, right? And they're like, oh, but we had this one guy 8 years ago and he was so great, and we just needed that for the last 8 years. Now our people do feel like heroes because they come in. We don't know everything there is to know about everything, but we're really good at putting it together and saying, okay, let's make this cohesive, optimized, planned for the future, so that you have a well-defined roadmap, so that when you get some new initiative from your CEO in 6 months, you have some kind of a framework to put that in so that you can then adapt, because the CEO is the CEO after all, right? So yeah.
Is this, I mean, it feels like this, it's almost a new category, right? It's a new category of service. It is. You're not here, you're not there, you're in this new space of senior operations, infrastructure engineers. Like this is bringing it together. So
yeah, and I think I'm allowed to say this, but the way we've again, here's the pun, the way we've structured this, it's structured. We've gotten a validation from Gartner that really there's not anybody else doing this, and there's a deep need for this in the market, and we're kind of on the front end of that. That's exciting to me too. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you both the question of, if somebody listening right now they're hearing what your guys are describing, the sprawl, the chaos of the platform, the tech debt, that's, just the systems that are not working together. What's the first conversation that they should be having within their own organization before they pick up the phone to call you?
Yeah. So on first blush, our service can seem like a threat to the internal engineers, right? And I think making sure that your engineers understand we're trying to level up everyone, and we're actually bringing in people. I haven't really said anything about this, but we're bringing in people who also typically enjoy a little bit of mentorship. They want to grow you in your skill set, and they want to improve the overall outcomes, right? We don't have the budget to hire somebody in this seat full time, or let alone a whole team to fill this seat the whole time. And so what we are going to do is we're going to bring in this service. They're not after your jobs. We're not trying to grab more and more in the organization. What we're actually just trying to do is build something that's really tailored to the needs of the organization. And if it needs to scale up, it does. If it scales down, it does, right? And what we do is we fit the need of the organization, and we help increase, in the end, the velocity and the effectiveness of the organization in achieving their mission.
I agree with Seth in the sense of, there has to be some consensus with their team around, this is something we're exploring to help all of us and bring all of us up, and whatever, we all rise with the water together kind of thing. I think the other piece, just from maybe more, I guess, tactical piece, is that they should understand really what those, maybe their key 3-5 year type objectives, goals are. That's going to be really helpful to start with Seth or somebody from this team around this conversation. Is it, how do we more effectively optimize and use AI in our environment? We need to lower the cost of delivering this solution to our clients. We need to increase our user experience because our tools are outdated and antiquated, and our users are getting frustrated supporting our customers. Those kinds of things. Every organization from a technology standpoint has some level of those, but I think, especially if it's a CIO coming to us, even senior director, VP, et cetera, let us help you with those those big items that are important to your board, to your stakeholders, et cetera, for Seth and his team to kind of latch on to help frame the conversation. Because that's what this is really about. It's not about selling technology. It's not about selling our service. It's not about any of those other pieces. It's about really achieving those outcomes and helping our clients solve those problems. We got to know what that problem is to help you get there.
You want to be able to tell a CIO all that without just destroying the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's the hard thing to get them to feel it. But I mean, I think the way you've said it, Bill, right, that it's focus on the outcomes. Focus on really, at the end of the day, what Seth and his team can actually do for you to help the business. So it's exciting, guys. Some very cool service for EPMS, and I think lots of enterprises out there. It's something that they can really take advantage of. So we'll end it there. And Seth, thanks for joining. I think, again,
glad to be
here. Listening, this is a great opportunity to learn more about this really different type of service that hasn't been out there in the market before. And check it out on structured.com. Thanks, guys, for joining, and we will see you next time on the pod.
Thanks, Nick.